Today I want to show you guys how to weave a net using a few tools. The tools are, you need a sizing card. It's a thin piece of wood. You want it to be as wide as you want the holes in your net to be. And you also are going to have a netting needle. I made these myself out of a piece of red oak board that I had laying around. I wanted to show you how to load your needle. Once again, this is just one I made from a piece of red oak board. So you get your string, or whatever you're using. You can use tarred twine like I'm using. You can use jute twine. You can buy that in the garden centers. Only the mason's twine, whatever you have. Mason's twine is cheap. It's a good way to practice. It can be a little slippery though, as far as when you do your knots. So you take a loop and you fit this loop over that center spike of the needle. And you hold that in place and you bring the string down to the bottom, rotate it, and it goes up and over the spike on the opposite side of where you started. And you just keep doing this until the spike here is full, until you can't make any more loops on top of it. Okay, close look at these tools here. It's just a flat sizing card or a gauge. This one's about 1.5 inches wide. And then here's your netting needle. You want the gauge to be wider than your needle, that way your needle can pass through it when you're weaving. The first step is to tie a loop in your twine. You need it to be big enough to go around the stake that you're going to tie from, and also big enough so your needle can pass through it. So let me just tie that real quick here. There we go. And we'll just place it over the stake. Now this is where your sizing card comes in handy. I hope this ground is contrasting enough so you can see in detail what I'm doing. So you take the card and you put it behind the twine, and then you take your needle and you're going to let off enough slack so that way you don't get, that way you can make it all the way through. And you're going to go, so you have the card behind the twine and up to the knot. You're going to pass your needle underneath through that loop. Now you're going to have 2 lines on top of the card. One's going under in the loop, one's going off to your needle. The one going off to your needle, you're going to hold with your thumb. You're going to go under the loop that's around your stake, over the top, and you're going to go through the loop created from you going over the top of your loop. Now you're going to pull it tight, and the piece that's underneath your thumb you're now going to release, making that knot at the top of your card. Then you're going to do that one more time. So we're going to go underneath the card and up through the from underneath the loop. Now we have a loop, and then we also have the other twine going to the needle. We're going to hold the one going to the needle with our thumb. We are then going to go underneath the loop to the stake, and then we're going to go, then the loop created by us going over that top loop, we're going to go underneath that also. It's kind of a S-shaped pattern once you get going. And as our knot gets close to the top of the card, we are going to release what our thumb was holding. That's going to give us 2 loops. Let me show you how that looks. So we work it out of our card off it. So now we have 2 loops here. Now that is our start. Our actual net's going to be in between here. So our next step, now what do? Start off the same as before. We're going to take our card is going to be underneath the needle, or underneath the thread, sorry. We're going to take our needle and go up underneath any of the loops, really, it doesn't make a difference. Gonna have to work that. I kind of pulled them tight, and then I have a lot of thread or a lot of twine on my needle, and
But as my needle gets thinner, this won't be such a problem. So now we're back on track here. And now we have our needle here. We're going to pull the slack until the card is underneath that loop. So then what we're going to do is just like before, we're going to go over the top of them and then kind of that S pattern of a loop going through the bottom of the loop. You're always going underneath. In this process, you're never going from the top. You're always going from under every time you go through a loop. And then we're going to pick up our other loop, our second one, and we are going to, and this tarred stuff really makes it hard to slide through, so just have patience, or maybe my card is borderline the right size for this needle, especially when it's full like this. So there we are again. We're going to go now, and this time, since this is the second loop, we're only going to go underneath just the loop we're underneath versus the whole thing. So you're going to go underneath and get some more slack out of our needle here. And then we're going to go kind of an S pattern through that loop that we created before. Now we're going to do that one more time. Every time you're making this, you're going on the making this net bigger, because it's going to make a diamond shape. When we're about halfway done, we're going to then drop a loop every time. But until now, we're going to add a loop every time. So we're going to do this one more time. We're going to go from underneath. Like that. Then we're going to go just between the loops. So, and then kind of an S pattern up and through. Pull that knot tight and take off our card and see what we got. So there is the first part of our net. So I went through the loop underneath and I'm on top of the card. I hold the line going to the needle with my thumb. I go underneath, but just the loop that I'm working on, not the loop I already finished. Underneath there, as I make an S kind of a shape underneath that loop that I created by going over the top of that loop area. And then as my knot gets to the top of the card, I release my thumb. That way the knots are all on top of the card. So I'm going to continue that all the way through. I'm going to do underneath. The loop meets to the top of the card. I'm going to go underneath that loop here, make that S kind of shape. I never go through the top of any loop I create. So if you're going over the top of something on a big part of the net backwards, what you're going to do is just shuffle these to the end, and they could even dump off the back end of it because they're already tied. And I make my knot. Now I'm at the end. But one thing I have to do now is to make one more, so that way I can keep building my net farther. So I'm not done with its final size yet. So, do it just like I did the first time. I went through the bottom, underneath this one loop, and then I went over the top of the card. I hold it with my thumb. I go underneath that loop there. And as I come around, I make that S shape to make the knot. And that's one more row. So, what I'm going to do is take it off the card here. Let's take a look. I should have two small loops, and then the big net pattern in the middle. So there's my loops, and I'm one row bigger, making a triangle pattern.